Hello, I'm Gaby Mendes.
And I'm Felix Kabutey Jr. You are now listening to the Talk Twenties podcast.
This podcast is your ultimate guide to adult life, where we discuss, with the help of our amazing guests, all the things that we were never taught in school.
Adult life can be really isolating as everyone's got their own thing going on. But remember, you're never alone. There are over 7 million of us 20-somethings all trying to figure it out. Let's unpack a new topic in today's episode. Hello, welcome again to a new episode of the Talk Twenties podcast. If you're not already, please make sure you subscribe and follow so you never miss an episode of us in the studio.
Today, we're joined in the studio by Timi Merriman-Johnson, aka Mr MoneyJar. Hello, Timi. So lovely to have you in the studio today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For those of us that don't know who you are, tell us a little bit more about who you are, why you're called Mr MoneyJar. Tell us all about you.
Who I am? Yep, I run a financial education platform for people in the UK. I've been doing it for about 3 years now. I do it full time. And I talk about personal finance, investing, getting on a property ladder, happiness, health.
Yeah.
And I'm really enjoying it. And as things have started to open up, like post-COVID, I'm starting to do more in-person things as well, like this lovely podcast.
Well, thank you for being here today. Also, recently, you might have been seen on ITV News, which was really cool, talking about cost of living crisis.
Maybe. Could've,
yeah, really cool. You've been featured on some amazing things. So it's likely that our audience may have seen you before. And if they're really avid fans of the podcast, they'll know that we also previously did an episode way back during COVID times across Zoom. But we talked a lot about investing. And that's an episode that I really enjoyed recording with you because it was kind of, at that moment in time, I wasn't investing at all. So you really did help me on my journey to understanding investing a little bit more. So
thank you. But, we were talking on the way here, just hugely gratifying and just very inspiring to see the Talk 20s journey and just all your progress. Just long may it continue.
Oh, thanks, Timi. I mean, that really means a lot. In this episode today, we're gonna be talking a little bit about a lot of different things to do with money, mainly in different circumstances and how we feel about it. So we're going to talk about it in the sense of family and money, friends and money, love and money, and work and money. All of those different scenarios where conversations about money are definitely going to crop up. And one of the things that we talk often about in our 20s is that no one really teaches us to talk about money or to speak about money with our friends, with our family, in loads of different situations. So I'm really excited to dive into that with you today. But yeah, really excited to have you in the studio.
Yeah. I mean, exactly as you said there, Gaby, money isn't an enabler. And it's not just as simple as it allows you to buy this or it doesn't allow you to buy that. But again, it affects your family, your relationships, your work life, just so many different things. And that's why I really enjoy your content, Timi, and everything that you talk about. For those that do follow your content as well, they know that you're not afraid to touch on the hard conversations, the elephants in the room. And a massive elephant at the moment is the cost of living crisis. It's something that's really affecting people of all ages, but especially those of us in our 20s, early 30s as well. We might not remember the last recession of 2008. What can we understand by the word recession, and what's your advice for people navigating this at this time?
Yeah, well, the technical definition of a recession is when you have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth. And that's done every January to March, and then the remaining quarters of the year. And we may be in one now, but we won't know that until January and October to December's numbers come in. And with negative economic growth comes things like job losses, businesses are shuttered, productivity declines, morale is low. And it can be quite a scary time and quite a difficult time. I started university around the time of the 2008 recession. I remember being too young to understand what was going on, but it definitely affected my parents. When you go on the news, we were talking about this before, so much doom and gloom. It just feels like the sky is falling in. And I think it's very important for all of us to protect our mental health and to dip into the news and mainstream media as and when we need to find things out. But to not bludgeon ourselves over the head with it. So that's what you see if you look at the news. If you zoom out, however, we know, and our listeners can search this online, that since the start of the 20th century, we have had a recession about, on average, once every decade, lasting between 6 months to 18 months. The coronavirus recession was the last one in 2020. That was slightly shorter at 3 months, and the market recovered afterwards. So I like to think of a recession almost like an economic winter time. Would we like the sun to be out all the time? Of course we would, but we know that winter always comes. And so it's about getting through this period safely, smartly, and kindly, rather than wishing it away. And then what I'd finally say is after winter comes spring. So we have decades worth of data which show us that markets do recover as well. So I think it is what it is, and we just need to get through it as best as we can.
That's so true.
I love the positive angle that you spin on that as well, because I think lots of what you said we see lots of doom and gloom in the media, and it feels really scary sometimes to be talking about money on the podcast so openly without having to, address cost of living and how, we're going through more difficult times than we have done previously. And I think it's really tricky for those of us in our 20s. It's a time when lots of us want to do lots of different things. You've got an element of freedom. You maybe want to travel a little bit. You want to spend time with your friends. And I don't know, I'm feeling a sense of like a little bit of guilt when I do spend money on those things, because I'm like, I'm trying to think ahead, but the cost of living is coming, and I should I really be saving that money for a rainy day? And I think it's a really tricky point, because it's like you only live once, but then at the same time, I don't want to put myself into a difficult financial position in the future. So I think it's a really tricky time for a 20-something. That's what I'm feeling. I don't know how you feel about cost of living and stuff. Yeah,
I completely agree. And I just think back to the point you made there about the news and a lot of the doom and gloom. I think that makes it so much more difficult as well. Try and stay positive when all you see is that negativity. But it's like you said, it's important to be, I feel like, informed, but don't be immersed. And I think that's where the problem lies, right?
Yeah.
And then with the cost of living, even now, I still see it from a perspective of like, how can I help my parents? Equally as back in 2008 when I was too young to understand, and then the real effects were on my parents. I almost feel like at this time it's me and my parents. Like, how can I help them as well as helping myself? So I feel like I'm trying to make sure I'm okay, but also trying to make sure my family's okay. And then I think that's the difference for me. And yeah, it's quite difficult. So I'm trying to think about my own mental health, and I'm also worrying about them too.
Because it's affecting everyone around us, right? It's a tricky time. And I think family money is a really interesting conversation, actually, because I think, the conversations that we have around money often are formed in those, and our thoughts around money are often formed in those early years, those formative years, and kind of how we use our money, all of our money beliefs sort of thing are generally formed at an early age. When you're talking about family and money, like for your situation, Timi, like how much is of how we kind of live and develop in terms of money is developed by those early years? Yeah,
there's a very fascinating study on the Money Helper website. It's a Cambridge study, and they found that your money habits and behaviors are formed as early as 7 years old. So at the age of 7, you're able to understand the concepts of like paying for things and getting things in return. What they found is that children don't quite understand the difference between luxuries and essentials at that age. But like you're basically looking at your family's behavior, you're being advertised to, and your money habits are locked in. But that doesn't mean that they're locked in permanently. So I'm a really big believer in having a growth mindset. And having a growth mindset basically says that if there's a skill that I need to learn, I can do what I need to do to learn it. And if you have a growth mindset throughout your life from when you're young, then you can break free of money scripts and like things that you learned when you were young. And like all these things that you pick up when you're young, it's unavoidable. Yeah. My youngest brother, I'm 17 years older than him. He's 16 now. And I'll never forget one time, he was like 5, and he said that he wanted the latest Call of Duty around the Christmas time. I was like, how does he know about that? But it's just like, when I was young, you read the Argos catalogue. Like that's how you decided the things you wanted to.
Ticked off what you wanted.
Yeah. But you just never bought it. But,
wishful thinking.
Yeah. But for his generation, he's like on like his mum's phone, he's on a tablet, he's being advertised to every single YouTube video he watches and stuff. So of course he's going to see that stuff.
So do you think it's getting worse then for the next generation, like growing up? Do you think they're going to be more prone to want to spend more money, want more luxurious things?
If for previous generations, the difficulty was maybe a lack of access to things, I think going forward definitely is going to be just like over access. So the availability of credit, just being advertised to all the time, just awareness. You can just be aware of what's going on in the world at any particular time. So I think the way that you deal with that is by being more discerning and saying yes to the right things. And that's difficult because we're talking about willpower there, and willpower is like there's a finite amount of willpower that you can exercise, and you just become tired and like, yes, I'll buy the thing.
That's when they've got you.
Yeah, fine. I've seen the advert for the 1,000th time. I'll buy the thing.
Yeah.
But then even like you say, when you think back to your childhood and you can straight away see the differences and also some similarities with your younger brother, do you feel like you want to play an active role in trying to help him make correct financial decisions, maybe on some financial decisions that you didn't have the opportunity to make when you were younger?
Definitely. I was talking to my brother on the weekend and he was like, Timi, Andrew Tate said. I was like, what did Andrew Tate say? Why are you listening to... So now I am in... Because I create content. So now I'm in competition with Andrew.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that for everything he says, I'm like, open an ISA. Save an emergency fund. Such is the nature of the internet. Yeah. But also, I think my brother needs to help me. The fascinating thing about people his age and younger is that I'm probably not going to live into the next century, but people his age and younger probably will. They'll be around in 2100 and beyond. So they are the people who are going to inherit the earth and they're going to form societies of the future. So I'm asking him, like, so what do you think the future is going to be like? Because you're going to be there, mate. Like, I'm not going to be here.
Completely agree. I feel the same way about my younger sisters. And then in a way, I'm kind of looking back and thinking, am I now what I used to think of my parents back in the day when they were trying to advise me on stuff, especially money? But it's so important, like you say, because there's so much sometimes misinformation out there. It's important to you know, butter that with the correct information, as you say.
Yeah, and it's continuing on this, the misinformation thing is continuing on this theme of, I think the challenge for us nowadays is like, there's too much.
I agree.
It's too much noise.
So much, yeah.
And you need to have ways to narrow down the things that you want to do, discernment. That's like a big word for me at the moment.
Any advice on that to me? Because I think that's really hard to do. Like, I think a lot of people say, oh, like, unfollow the people that you don't find helpful on Instagram. And like, that's one thing, but like, doesn't stop you being bombarded by a million other things. You know, I think it's tricky to, you know, it only takes one scroll or notifications popping up on your phone and your life is constantly being disrupted.
Yeah, it's a fantastic question, Gaby. I think it is about curation. So that whole unfollow, or if you don't want to unfollow people, mute pages that you don't want to follow. Like my... because algorithms are like kind of dumb. Like you watch one cat video and then all of a sudden your feed is just like 50 cat videos. But yeah, you do need to curate the things that you're seeing and be intentional about the stuff you consume. I actually deleted my YouTube account because I didn't like what I was seeing in my feed. I deleted it completely and I started again. And now it's a bit more kind of balanced, the things that I'm seeing. I also think self-awareness is a big thing here too. Like when you know yourself and you know what your triggers are and you know when you're caught in unhealthy patterns, you can almost find yourself and pull yourself out of that. I did a lot of doom scrolling during lockdown. A lot.
I think we're all guilty of it.
Yeah, 100%.
Watching like the morning news shows and like going onto the news apps and looking at the most read. But having a self-awareness of being like, you're doing that thing again, like you're bludgeoning yourself over the head with the news, allowed me to like catch myself and stop doing that.
Literally, as you said, 2020, when you was doing a lot of the doom scroll, I'm just thinking back and how much that affected me. But it's the way you said you weren't afraid to delete your YouTube account and start again. I think some people sometimes are a bit worried about, oh, what about my following? Oh, I've had this for such a long time. No, you need to actually check on yourself and do what's best for you. You know what I'm saying?
Or have two accounts, you know? Yeah, so it wasn't like my professional social medias or whatever. That's on one thing and that's on a separate phone. But my personals, if you look at my personal Instagram page, I have posted nothing. I have no followers and I just follow video game accounts. I have an S tier feed because whenever I go in, it's just stuff that makes me happy.
Yeah.
It reminds me of being young and playing. You got like an arcade machine in the corner there. That was me and my brother when we were young. We just used to play video games together. And I actually read a piece in the news today, this week, sorry, that said that like nostalgia is actually healthy for us. It's like really therapeutic for us. So yeah, like just no, our lives are allowed to be happy. We don't need to have like 100%. Issues all the time.
Yeah, definitely. I'll be calling you up to that game in a bit.
I hope you're ready to lose.
Oh, I think I'll be bringing some nostalgia back for you getting beat.
Competition is on.
It is.
Our headline sponsor, Zopa Bank, they're one of the UK's leading digital banks. With the cost of living squeeze hitting the UK now more than ever, it's important that we consider our financial resilience. Getting a clear picture of your current financial health is invaluable so you can make the best decisions based on your current situation. Zopa have a great, simple, free-to-use tool called Borrowing Power that's free to use in their free app. Borrowing Power will give you a clear view of how Zopa see your financial health with a simple 1 to 10 rating, with 10 being that your financial health is in good shape. But if you're not a 10, it'll give you personalized tips on what you need to do to improve your score over time. Go to your usual app store and search Zopa, that's ZOPA, and check out your Borrowing Power now.
That topic of discernment is such a key word, and I feel like sometimes your discernment can come from your parents and the advice they give you. Just on that topic then of your parents and money, we've all heard of the term, the bank of mum and dad. You know, the bank of mum and dad can get you out of a tricky situation. The bank of mum and dad can help you get on the property ladder. What's your view on that?
Yeah, it's a very interesting area of finance, bank of mum and dad, or BOMAD as I like to call it. One of the biggest lenders when it comes to property. And I think I read they're gonna transfer something like 6.5 billion.
Wow.
Or they have done this year. So it's like a lot of money. And I think there's like a few angles to it. One, I think that there is a lot of shame and kind of fear around getting help. I remember I used to work with someone, and we were all talking about like buying houses. We were in our 20s, and we all used to have these chats together about how expensive things were and how we would never be able to get on the property ladder. And then one day she was just like, yeah, I'm buying a house. I've just been left some money. And you could see the look of embarrassment on her face. So I completely appreciate that. But what I also think is, if we are to, if we actually want generational wealth to be a thing, then like passing on your assets and passing your estate is part of that. You know, we can't shame people for like getting help from people or for doing things that we would want to do for our kids. 100%. So yeah, I think it's like a very multifaceted, nuanced issue. But you know, they're the generation with all the wealth. There will be a wealth transfer in the billions or even like trillions in the years to come. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Obviously, I think for our listeners as well, I think it's tricky, isn't it? Because, you know, having the financial support of the bank of mum and dad, it is a privileged position to be in. But I think you're right that like when you are left it and maybe others around you are not, that poses difficult conversations between yourself and your friends sometimes. That you mentioned there, one of your colleagues. And I think it's really difficult then to, you know, to have open conversations around money with your friends. So we said we talk about family, we said we talk about friends in this episode. And I think it's one of those things that like, it makes the whole thing around keeping up with the Joneses and all of those kind of conversations really, really difficult, because people's financial circumstances are completely different. It's also really difficult to know your friends' financial situations, because often we don't talk about it. So for young people who are maybe feel uncomfortable to talk about money with their friends, what would you advise?
I don't know if I'm super representative in answering this question, because I am known amongst my friends as the person who talks about money. So let me rewind back to maybe before I did this.
Yeah,
I think it's about having a trusted group of people that you can speak with. I think in an ideal world you'd be able to speak about money with anyone, but it is quite a taboo topic still. There's actually a stat that I heard I haven't like verified it, but I do. If it turned out to be true, I definitely believe it. Which is that Brits would be way happier to speak about the number of people they slept with than their annual salary.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're kind of like, yeah, that's probably true.
That sounds like Britain to me.
So I think when I want to learn something, I don't just speak to anyone. I will try to seek out the people in my network, my friends, my family members who are qualified on that subject. I've got friends who are doctors, for example. I've got friends who go to the gym, and I'll seek out their help and their counsel on that. So when it comes to subjects that are taboo or that are difficult to speak about, you need to have your core like group of people, your trusted circle that you can speak to and have non-judgmental and open conversations with. And you might find that in that group of people, you might need to be the person who sticks their head above the parapet first to then put everyone else at put everyone else at ease, sorry. But I think it's very important to talk about money, because when you don't talk about money, this is why in organizations, for example, you have things like pay gaps and those sorts of discrepancies. It's like it's a not sharing of information that leads to that. But I'm not going to pretend as if it isn't hard and that more work doesn't need to be done in this regard.
Absolutely.
I think I definitely need to take some of that advice on, because I recently tried to set something up with, I'd say my closest friends, because again, I wanted to encourage more of a money conversation. And I don't know if you're familiar with the term susu, in terms of, you're from Nigerian heritage, I'm from Ghanaian heritage.
Yeah,
so
we call it ajo.
Ajo. Okay. In Ghana, we call it susu. So essentially, it's like in West African culture, and it's a group of friends, family, and they put money together, and then kind of ballots who would get it. Like if you're in a situation where you need the money, or
So if you familiar with it, Gab?
You've told me about it before.
I've mentioned it before.
I'm kind of familiar with
I'm
it.
always
But explain it
educating.
to our listeners who might not know.
always educating Gaby, making it a little bit more cultured.
So the umbrella term for it is called rotating savings. So let's pretend you have a group of 4 people and someone needs £1,000, but each person can only afford 250 quid. You go, okay, over the next 4 months, we're all going to put our 4 250s into a pot. Person A will get the £1,000 in the first month.
Yeah.
Month 2, everyone puts in 250 again, person B. And you continue that until everyone has had a hand of the £1,000. And like I've got family in Nigeria. They'll just do this over and over again for like plane tickets, buying a car, like big purchases. And it's a way of pooling your money together to get something bigger out of it. And a lot of communities, when they first arrived in the UK and they couldn't get money from institutions, had to rely on this to raise money. People bought houses, like people raised house deposits with this method.
Yeah, I think it's really popular, not even just African culture, but
it's
a lot, so
all
many,
over the world.
so many.
My wife is Scottish, and there they called it a menage.
A menage. That's really interesting. So it's as well as much as it is practical help as well. I also introduced it to my friend group to have more of a money conversation, but it didn't quite go to plan. I mean, we're still doing it now, but we're going to put an end to it. And it's just, even in that situation, it was still very difficult to have that money conversation. And like, I said to them, like, if you need it for any certain month, like, tell us what's going on, and then we'll give you the money, but also try to advise you as well. A friend of mine recently just shared some information with me that he was going through a hard time. And I wish I could have, kind of been there a bit earlier on in the situation, just to, just have that money conversation with him. So even creating that environment is still difficult, but the advice I'm taking away from there is maybe I have to be the first one to, like you said, put my head above and be that more open, because I'll be honest, I wasn't as open as I should have been.
Yeah, I think something that people are never going to be opposed to as well is like getting help. So the way in which I speak to money now is, speak to friends about money now, is to try and help them with things, give them tips, like put them on. If I hear about a new thing, tell them that. No one's ever going to be like, why did you tell me about this new way to save money? Or why did you just tell me about this great app? Yeah. So maybe start with like giving people tips and help on whatever the subject is.
Sure.
Yeah, that's really, really good.
I think also like when we're moving into like in your 20s, you tend to have quite a lot of, you start maybe dating a little bit. You maybe do find that person that you want to settle down with, et cetera, et cetera. I know for my situation, I'm very recently engaged, so I'm currently planning a wedding,
Congrats.
which is expensive, very, very expensive, but also amazing at the same time. Like we had a little like engagement party like a few months back, and it was just amazing. Like it was so good. Like I just absolutely loved it. So I can't even imagine what a wedding's going to feel like. But I think it's like really interesting to understand like love and money. I know there's a lot of discussion around, finances and how, partners that may be in debt or have a house or different financial circumstances and different people coming from different perspectives. Like how can you form a bond with someone when there is some kind of difficult conversations that need to still be had about money in a relationship?
So before I answer that, congratulations.
Thank you.
Weddings are expensive, but I've been married just over 1 year, and I'll tell you, one of the best investments you can make in your relationship is to get marriage counseling. Or I'll call it relationship counseling because not everyone wants to get married. A lot cheaper than a wedding day, but it will last you.
Yeah. I think that's sound advice, actually.
Yeah. I've heard that advice as well. Like,
There's a great platform called Relate.
Okay.
And they do like over Zoom, like marriage counseling.
Cool.
I recommend it to everyone who gets married, but or is in a relationship. But I think again, like the friends conversation, money and relationships can be very difficult. What worked for me and my then girlfriend, now wife, was talking about money in the things that we were already doing. So our first money conversations related around things we wanted to do together, I guess, and how we wanted to pay for those things. And so like we used to go to Nando's a lot.
Yeah.
I think we were shareholders at one point.
Yeah. I literally went yesterday. It's our favorite place.
It's just so simple.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah.
Just know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
It's easy.
And that was actually the genesis of us getting a joint account together because we
Just Nando's.
Yeah. It was a Nando's account.
Yeah, specific.
Because we were going out, we were eating out a lot. We'd been together for some time, and we were like, okay, I'll pay, then you pay, then I'll pay, then you pay. And then we opened the joint account, and then that became our eating out and dates account.
Yeah.
And then over time, not overnight, but over time, that became the account that we would then go on to pay the more boring stuff out of, like our bills and our rent and stuff. So I would say start small and build, and use the things you already do to be the touch point to have that financial conversation. And when you start with things like Nando's, you won't realize it, but you're practicing for those, they don't need to be like serious conversations, but the more significant conversations 100%. Down the line. And you're learning about each other's attitude towards money as you're doing these things. So by the time you come to plan something like a wedding day, for example, you have an idea of who this person is that you're with. You're never going to be 100% compatible with someone else. So it's about knowing what they're like and then almost growing together in that.
Yeah. See, what I like about that, Timi, is similar to the conversation with friends. By doing those little things, you're starting to build the principles that do make the harder conversations much, much easier. Because you're essentially building the trust. I mean, you started off with the Nando's and then you've gone to planning your wedding. So you're very much building those early principles that help you on later life. And I've always said, in relationships, you have hard conversations. Like that's a sign of a good relationship if you have those hard conversations. And money is a hard conversation, but there are things you can do, as you've mentioned, that kind of help that conversation to take place and make it a little bit more easier.
Yeah. These are what we call second order consequences. So when you do one thing, but you don't actually realize that you're like learning another thing. And this is happening all the time. You're always learning, you're always picking things up.
That's really interesting. So we've kind of spoke about the good side of relationships and if everything works out as well as it's working out for yourself and Gaby. But what about on the other side? When it comes to relationships, money and breakups, that can be something that's really difficult. Whether a couple might have a joint account or one one partner owes another partner money. What advice would you give for navigating that situation, those more trickier conversations?
Yeah, well, on the sharpest end of that, if it's like financial economic abuse, then it's about speaking to experts that can actually help you. So there is a charity in the UK called Surviving Economic Abuse, and they can help. They can give help and advice to people who are suffering from that. But yeah, breakups are difficult. I would hope that in that sort of situation that both people can sort of be mature and transparent about it and come up with a resolution as to how things should be divvied up or concluded. The thing that I'll say that people should watch out for is when you have joint financial products, like a joint account, for example, this can tie both of your credit histories together. I was actually giving a coaching session to someone and their credit score was lower than they thought it should be. And I signed them up to a platform that showed them like what was going on with their credit score with the 3 different credit reference agencies. And he didn't realize that his ex-wife's joint account was still on his credit file.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So you just need to make that, from the financial perspective, make sure that you unlink yourself from that person financially.
Really good advice. I didn't know that actually, like that your credit rating, I guess it's obvious actually because you're making purchases jointly together, so it does make sense, but it's probably another aspect of breakups that just make it even harder than it is.
All relationships are different, but a system that works for me in my relationship is some things are joint and then some things are separate.
I'm the same.
Nice. So me and my wife both get paid. We pay the joint bank account. That's where our like bills come out of, our subscriptions, all the things that we consider joint, like groceries and food and stuff. And then the joint bank account pays us both pocket money every month, almost like one of the bills on the first of the month. We both get paid that pocket money, and then we can use that pocket money to do whatever we want to do personally. Again, we didn't get to that system like on day one, but we just built and learned and discussed over time, and that was a system that worked for us. I think it's very important that you have a bit of money that you can just use for yourself and that it isn't 100% joint. Because if you're using a joint account, for example, you could just wake up one day, the joint account's empty, all your money's gone. So I think it's good to have that kind of that split there when it comes to how you manage your money. And how do you top up that joint account? If you earn different amounts of money, you can choose to do it equally. You can choose to do it by percentage. Have that conversation, work out what system works for you.
That's good advice.
And be open to changing the system over time if you need to.
I think that's the most important thing is like to grow and adapt. Like I've always said, like me and my partner, like we take it in turns to make a leap or a different situation with our jobs. So, you know, when we were first together, like I wanted to leave teaching. And so I left teaching. I found a new situation job. And once I was on my feet, then my partner left his job and moved to something else. And we kind of have just always taken it in turns to make different difficult financial leaps and decisions so that one of us is always the anchor, if that makes sense. So that one of us is always going, okay, we got this covered. Like if we were to both quit and leave jobs at the exact same, it'd probably be carnage because you'd be like, oh, I don't know what this is happening. And actually I don't like this job. And so we kind of just take it in turns that kind of way. And I think that's really helped us grow together because we understand each other's financial situations. And also we're 100% supportive of that in that kind of way.
Do you have a spreadsheet?
We don't have a spreadsheet, no.
All right. Me and my wife, we have this massive spreadsheet. Like
Tell me about the spreadsheet.
Oh, right. Yeah. So
do I need one?
I think it's a good idea. We have a joint budget spreadsheet.
Wow.
All the months across the top, January to December, and then down the side, you have all of the budgeting categories. And every week we check it. So we have a weekly admin session where we look at all of not just our money, but like what's going on that week in the calendar and the joint to-do list and all of that. And then every month we update it and stuff. So we can do things like she I don't know if she's happy with this or if she regrets it, but she was like, Timi, we need to be way more organized with our finances.
Yeah.
And then I just sat down for 3 hours and made this joint budget spreadsheet, and I showed it to her and she was like, wow, that's like, you really like answered that literally.
Yeah.
I actually showed the spreadsheet to my accountant as well. And I was like, do you have any feedback? She was like, I have no feedback.
It's an excellent spreadsheet. Yeah.
So it allows us to do things like, and then it's like the income categories are on the top, the expense categories are underneath.
Yeah.
And then you've got like the balance at the bottom. So you can see what you're left over with at the end of the month. So it allows us to do things like, if Timi was to quit his job, let's delete Timi's income there.
Yeah.
What happens to all the balances? Oh, they all turn red. Maybe Timi's going to continue working for a bit.
Allows you to forecast a little bit, right?
Yeah.
I love that.
Really
I might ask for a copy of this spreadsheet to me.
Nice.
That's the pinnacle of like organization of the
really
really
something to
organized.
aspire to.
When you're doing something like a wedding, you want to be able to
True.
put it in and see where it leaves you.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a spreadsheet though, but you want to have visibility of some form.
Yeah.
And what I'm really taking away from that is for like the couples that are a little bit earlier on in their journey, that's when you still have like the conversations and you kind of what you're compatible on in terms of like, I love the way your wife said to you, we need to get more organized. And then boom, he was able to put something into action. So yeah, I really like that.
I'd love to chat to you a little bit more about those people that might be listening right now who feel like they want to talk about money with their boss,
Yes.
but don't know how to.
Yeah.
Because it's a tricky one, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm going to loop in boss and colleagues with that because I think I've worked in a company where there was complete wage transparency. Everyone knew what everyone earned. And I thought that would really mess up the culture. But what I learned from that was that actually the thing that's normal is just the thing that's normal in the company. And so I think that at least within companies, people should have a sense of what the other people are earning. Because I've worked in cultures where you're like, is that person earning more than me? And I think it gets in the way. So what I'll say, and I do like to drop this one, is that the 2010 Equality Act renders pay secrecy clauses in contracts unenforceable. What does this mean? It means that legally you can speak to your colleagues about how much you're earning. Again, colleagues that you trust, but you can speak to someone and be like, I'm on this, are you on that? And they can be like, no, I'm not. You're like, what? And then you can use that to benchmark and then to have a conversation with your boss or the person who's in charge about how much you would like to be paid. In this current economic climate that we're in, you can cut away, but like ultimately it does come down to increasing your income if you want to do better. And yes, you can do side hustles. Yes, you can start a business. But the fact is that for most of us, you work a job and probably the biggest increase you'll see in your income will come from a promotion or moving job.
Yeah.
When it comes to the promotion conversation, the thing that I've seen work time and time again is to come up with a plan with your boss or with your employer about the additional tasks or responsibilities you're going to take on over the next 6, 12 months or whatever it is. And you almost get them to buy into your growth in the company and the pay rise that you're going to get as a result of that.
I love that.
I've seen this work time and time again. It's like, look, I want to be promoted. I want to level up in this company. What do I need to do to be able to do that? Go there with a notebook, write the things down. When you do the thing, you go back to them. I did the thing.
Yeah.
What next thing do you want me
This
to do?
was actually how I helped career change. So I can actually say like a real life example of this.
Yeah.
So I moved into a company where it was where I moved from teaching to events, and I took a pay cut in order to be able to do that because I wasn't loving teaching, and I really wanted to work in corporate. I really wanted to work in business. I had quite a business head on my shoulders, wasn't using it in education, so moved to events. When I got into this company, I started on like a lower wage than what I was obviously on, and very quickly I was doing an all right job at this role, but they were like, we're going to give you a promotion. And they offered me £1,000 more to my salary. It was genuinely still way off what I was earning as a teacher. And I said, thank you very much, but I've been teaching for 2 years and this is already way less than I was being paid. But I'm happy to sit down and discuss how I can help support your company.
Yep.
and you can pay me this. So at that moment in time, they had an intern program where they were taking on intern students from universities and providing them an opportunity to learn and grow within the business. But no one was looking after these interns well. And as a result, they were kind of a little bit all over the place. They were in different departments. They were struggling to even recruit them, the university conversation and stuff. I was like, how about I step in and I take up, a little bit of that responsibility. I make sure the intern's okay in the company. I put out jobs, I read ads, and I do all of those kind of things. I had a little bit of experience in recruitment as well. And how about my salary goes to this? And it was to match my teaching qualification, my teaching salary. And they're like, okay, well, that's actually a problem that we really need to solve within the business, actually. It's actually a problem that we really need help with. Do you think you can do that in addition to the role you're doing? I was like, absolutely. I was a teacher for 2 years. I can literally do anything. And then they were like, okay, well, that's cool. Like, right, let's see how that can work. And then that is how I got up to the same salary as in teaching.
That's a fantastic story because, it seems a bit icky to think about having a job in these terms, but as a member of staff in a company, you are a cost to the business. Mm-hmm. You're one of the biggest costs to the business. And so the business is incentivized essentially to pay you as little as they possibly can, but to get as much out of you. And you'll see like more benign and more kind of nefarious versions of that. But the business wants to make money. Mm-hmm. So if you can help in a way that helps reduce costs or save the business time, or if you can do as part of your job something that brings in more money, they will want to keep you there and they will want to throw money at you because you're literally bringing in more money to the business.
Exactly.
But I do also think that if you do all of this stuff and you still don't get the promotion or the pay rise that you want to, you do need to be prepared to leave. Because some of the biggest pay jumps that I've seen with my friends and family have come from when they've left one job and moved to another job. And you also need to recognize that different industries will just pay different amounts as well.
So true. So true. Even sometimes the same industry, but depending on if you work in public sector or private sector, you might see a massive pay difference. I mean, so that's literally ties in perfectly to my next question as well. If they've done everything that you've advised, even done the Gaby approach, literally going to your employer and offering them a solution to their problem essentially, and they're still not getting that next step, what's your advice for then finding another job, or even in the worst case scenario, if you're facing redundancy, how do you then transfer to another kind of role?
I hope this answers your question. I think when looking at a job now, I would prioritize income, but I would also prioritize purpose and happiness.
So true.
So, if I was, I'm running my own business now, but I would go into an industry that I wanted to spend a long time in, and that actually helps like the country grow and recover from the situation that we're in at the moment. Like if you're being made redundant, you should receive a payout due to that. So hopefully that will give you some breathing space. Something that's also helped me, like being in between jobs and has given me the mental space to leave a job, was saving up an emergency fund. I didn't get that for a long time. I was living paycheck to paycheck for a long time. Then once I started to save, I was like, all right, so if I was to lose my job or if I did need to move on, I've at least got this cash buffer here and I can take my time. So for me, a big one, if looking for a new company and stuff, is to think about the money, yes, but also think about somewhere that like you'd actually want to work and that you'd enjoy working at.
Yeah, I think that's great advice.
Well, Timi, it's been amazing to have you back on the podcast. I've absolutely loved chatting to you today. I think, the words of wisdom that you share about, this current climate that we're going through, you've made me just go, it's not going to be as bad as we thought it was going to be, because I think you have a way of words where, it's fairly positive.
When in doubt, zoom out.
Love that. So true.
What was that book recommendation about zooming out?
Factfulness.
Yeah,
we were talking about it before. Yeah, the world is improving. It doesn't improve in a straight line, and it doesn't improve all the time for everyone. But on average, if you look at child mortality, if you look at education of women and girls, if you look at the amount of deaths from like wars, disease, famine, all these things are decreasing. And you just need to be informed, but not immersed, as you said. But also like seek out sources of positive news as well.
Absolutely, for sure. Well, we always end the podcast with the same question that we ask every guest. I can't actually remember what you said in last time's episode, but if you could look back to 20-year-old Timi and give him just one piece of advice that would see him through his 20s, what would you say to him?
I think understand the power of compound returns. And not all compound returns are financial. But when it comes to finances, it says that, if you invest money over time, that money will grow exponentially. That's what happens if you invest in the stock market, for example. But that also happens with relationships. It happens where you choose to work. It happens with your body and stuff. People used to tell me when I was in my 20s that when you get to your 30s, stuff just stops working. Not everything. But,
Just to clarify that
one. But yeah, I have to stretch every morning now because I'm in my 30s. So just spend your whole 20s like looking after your body, being active, like staying healthy. I have friends now that I've been friends with since secondary school. They've been my friends for 20 years now. So invest in relationships. If you have a thing, because we were talking before about there being like so much and us needing to be more discerning. I think if you can focus on like the fewer things that matter to you and really invest in them, they will pay you dividends for years to come. That's what I'll say to 20-year-old Timi.
Wise advice.
Very wise
Thank
advice.
you, Timi. It's been amazing chatting to you.
Thanks so much, man.
Thank you for having me.
A big thank you to you, yes you, for tuning into this episode of the Talk 20s podcast.
We hope it inspired you in some way and popped a little pep in your step for this week.
Make sure you subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with a friend. It means a lot to us to have your support.
We also love hearing your stories and suggestions. You can reach out to us on all socials by searching @Talk20s.
Lastly, before we go, our website, talk20s.com, is the hub for all things 20-somethings. Go check out, my people.
Have a great week and we'll see you next time.